Hey groupers, Pastor Marshall here. I hope that you are ready to dig in to the next study in Acts 23. We're getting close to the end of our study. Well, I started my message this last week with this question. Do you believe that God can use anyone or anything to accomplish his purposes? So I'd like you to tell a story or two about a time that God used someone or something that you wouldn't have expected to change your life, to direct your life. For instance, I have often believed that my bike accident, I think some of you know that when I was 12 years old, I was hit by a car on my bicycle. I had closed head injuries, I had seizures, I was in a coma. I know those of you that didn't know, that explains a lot. Up until that point in my life was on a solid sports trajectory. That was what my family was grooming me for, was sports. Everything changed that day. All of a sudden I wasn't allowed to do sports. Sports were on the back burner. Every kind of sport that had any kind of contact was off limits, and I wasn't very good at golf. So my life changed, and at that point sports were on the back burner and church took a bigger front seat in my life. I really think that event God used to direct my life. What about you? Well, right away we see the hatred of the Jews that they had for Paul. Have you ever been so mad at someone that you couldn't eat, you couldn't sleep, you just stewed your vindication that you were going to get back at them, what you were going to say, what you were going to do? Maybe you would tell. Hopefully it's not someone in your small group, but maybe you would just tell a time that you had this kind of anger, kind of rage. Next, Paul's nephew saves the day. Somehow he learns the plot and he spoils it by telling Paul, and then Paul sends him to tell the Roman commander. We're confident that Paul's family was alienated from him because of his Christian walk, that they were Jewish and that they forsook him. We even talk about divorcing our parents these days. It seems that his parents divorced him, which makes this kid's risk even all that much greater. So just for a second in your small group, talk about when he does this, what risk does it bring to his family relationships? When he does this, what risk does it bring to his community relationships? When he does this, what risk does it bring to his religious relationships? And even, don't forget to mention, what risk does it bring to his life? How does he put his life in danger? Remember the context. Well, the next thing that happens is Paul's escort to Caesarea is 470 soldiers strong. Why is it so large? Why do 470 men have to guard one man? And then next it says that Claudius writes a letter. I'd like you to try to compare the facts of Claudius's letter to the facts of the story. Now you're going to have to go back to last week's message and maybe even the passage before that. But he adds some things to the story. What does he add? He doesn't include everything in the story. What does he omit? Why do you think that he writes the letter the way that he does? And then finally, the Romans who crucified Jesus have now saved Paul 4 times. The Romans, who we generally call the bad guys, seem to have become the good guys. Does your view of the Romans need to change any? As Luke is recording Acts, we see the shift going away from the Romans being the bad guys and more to the Jewish community being the bad guys. How do you view the Romans, and do you need to view them differently? And how do you view the Jews of the first century, and do you need to view them differently? Every week, talk about what we like and what we don't like. I like Paul's nephew. I bet you do too. I don't like the 40 assassins. I bet you don't either. And then our application. Believe that God is working in our life. That's what we talked about in this message this last weekend. That God is working not in spite of our bad circumstances, not in spite of our challenges, but part of God's sovereignty, part of his power over all things is that he is working in our challenges. He is working in our struggles. And so just take a moment this week, and that's what I'm challenging you to do, to sit back and to rest in God's sovereignty. That no matter what challenges are going on in your life, to believe that God can even work through bad situations and bad people. Well, I hope that you have a great group, and I look forward to seeing you this next weekend as we take the next step following the apostles in the book of Acts. God bless.